Welcome everyone. On behalf of USJET AA, I'm really glad to see you all at this webinar. My name is Jessica Livingston. I was an ALT on the JET program in Hokkaido from 2003 to 2006. I'm also the executive director of the US JET Alumni Association. So we're a nonprofit and we're dedicated to serving the JET community here in the USA. Like many of you, I'm sure, my relationship with Japan has spanned many years, and my Japanese skills came from a variety of places, but most definitely included my Japanese teachers in high school and also in university. And I think without them, my confidence in my own Japanese would not have flourished. And my interactions while I was on the JET program and living in Japan in different capacities would have definitely been much more stilted. So tonight I'm really excited to partner with the American Association of Teachers of Japanese, which is AATJ, to host this webinar. And the webinar is all about illuminating the pathway to becoming a Japanese language teacher and why we need Japanese language teachers. So with that, I'm going to invite Katie Ross, who's also a fellow JET alum and the executive director of AATJ, to say a few words.
Thanks, Jessica. Hi, everyone. My name's Katie Ross, and I am, as Jessica said, the Executive Director of American Association of Teachers of Japanese. And I was a CIR in Gifu City at the Gifu International Center way back in 2000 to 2001. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on behalf of AATJ. AATJ is the National U.S. Teachers Association for Japanese Language Educators at all levels of education, from K through 12 on up to college level, through graduate school, through your PhD program. And our mission is to provide professional development, networking, advocacy, and overall support to Japanese language educators so that they can continue to provide the best education and opportunities for their students. And some of today's panelists are members of AATJ, and one of them is even a past president of AATJ, Tabuse Sensei. And our moderator today, Kate Davis, is one of our vice presidents. She's over K through 12 education. And please, as you leave today's webinar, remember AATJ in the future as a resource as you navigate your next steps in your career. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And we'll share this with you, and I'm sure it will be mentioned during the talk tonight, but AATJ has a fantastic job board for teaching positions, Japanese language teaching positions. So next, I would like to thank and welcome the Japan Foundation of Los Angeles for supporting tonight's very informative discussion. We're honored to have Uchida-san with us. She's the director of Japan Foundation LA joining us. And I'd like to welcome her to say a few words on behalf of Japan Foundation LA.
Hi. Hello, everyone. 皆さん、こんばんは。My name is Yasuko Uchida. I am the director of the Japan Foundation Los Angeles. Thank you very much for inviting me today to the USJET AA hosted seminar, Pathways to Becoming a Japanese Language Educator. We are also pleased that JFLA has been able to support this seminar through our grant. Every 3 years, the Japan Foundation conducts a global survey of institutions offering Japanese language education. According to the most recent survey in the United States, conducted in 2024, there has been a significant decline compared to the previous survey in 2021. The number of learners decreased by 70% to 134,094, and the number of institutions dropped by 7% to 1,155. The number of teachers fell by 8% to 2,780. One major reason for this trend is that governments and school districts have been prioritizing STEM programs, resulting in budget cuts to world language programs. In addition, many current Japanese language teachers are retiring, and there are too few successors to replace them. As a result, some Japanese language courses are forced to close, or the shortage of teachers is used as a justification for program closures. This situation is also influenced by the fact that during the Japanese language boom of 1990s in the United States, many Japanese nationals who had immigrated to the US became Japanese language teachers. In recent years, however, many of these teachers have reached retirement age. Today, it has become increasingly difficult for Japanese nationals to obtain permanent residency in the United States. Therefore, in order to maintain and further develop Japanese language education in the US, it is essential to cultivate and secure American teachers of Japanese. Under these circumstances, JED program alumni who have an affinity to Japan and experience living and working there, and anyone else who is interested in Japan in general, represent a highly valuable pool of potential Japanese language educators. I hope that through today's seminar, you will gain essential information, build meaningful networks, and take your first concrete step toward pursuing a career as a Japanese language teacher. 楽しんでってください。
Thank you, Uchida-san. Thank you so much. As you can tell, Japan Foundation LA is really pretty foundational in the work that they do to support and encourage Japanese language, just proliferation, I guess, in the United States, and just help people really embrace it and learn the language and also share the language and teach the language. So I'm really, really happy that they can be here with us tonight, and I'm very grateful for their support.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I'm going to explain the schedule for tonight's webinar because we've got fantastic people here for you tonight. This evening we have 3 JET alumni who are teachers. They're working, they're in the field, so they're going to share just their personal experiences and their guidance and just some thoughts with you. We have 2 professors from Middlebury language schools, and they're going to help sort of pull back the curtain on, all of them together are going to help pull back the curtain on sort of next steps and how you can approach this. So the webinar is going to consist of 3 parts. First, we're going to have brief presentations by Tabuse Sensei and Dr. Salwin from Middlebury language schools. And that's going to be followed by a panel discussion with our JET alumni teachers. And then at the end, we're going to have about 20 to 30 minutes for you all to connect with our speakers. And that will happen in breakout rooms. So we'll sort of close down the main part of this presentation, and then we'll open up the breakout rooms, and you'll know everybody in the breakout, all the leaders of the breakout rooms by then, because you will have heard them all speak. But the breakout rooms will be named for each of the speakers. So you guys can hop around into whichever rooms you want to. You can hop in and out and ask the questions that are top of mind. You're also welcome to put questions in the chat along the way. If someone can answer them, they will. But if they don't get answered in the chat, then just bring those questions into the breakout room. So I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tabuse Sensei to get us started. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
はい、わかりました。では、スライドをシェアします。これ大丈夫ですか? First, I would like to thank US JET Alumni Association, Jessica and Julia, for this wonderful opportunity to talk about how to become Japanese language teachers. I am Motoko Tabuse, Director of School of Japanese at Middlebury Language Schools. In 2021, I launched our MA program to complement our traditional 8-week immersion program. Our primary goal was to recruit JET alumni who have already gained invaluable cultural and teaching experience in Japan, as Uchida Shocho has mentioned. Today, I am to provide you with an overview of how to become a professional Japanese language educator. And this is the agenda for today's presentation. You don't need to worry about taking notes on the links I mentioned. I believe Julia or Jessica will share a digital list of these resources with you later. So regardless of the fact that we do have a less learners and teachers, why is there still a high demand for Japanese language and culture teachers? As you can see from the pie chart by Mid-Atlantic Teachers of Japanese and those bar graphs by the Japan Foundation, we are currently facing a significant shortage. Many of our veteran teachers are reaching retirement age, and we are in dire need of a new generation to take their place. I hope that many of you will be ready to step into these classrooms in the next couple of years. Now, this map illustrates the distribution of Japanese language learners across the United States. The bluish states represent areas with higher concentrations of students, while the yellowish states have fewer. Although this data was published in 2021, the general trends remain very much accurate today. Now, this second map was also created by the recruiting company called Pasona in 2021. If you compare it to the previous map, you will see a clear overlap between student populations and professional opportunities. Now, finding teaching positions. There are several online resources available. For example, two of the reliable sources for these listings are Indeed and the AATJ, Association of Teachers of Japanese. Here we go. This is the AATJ homepage. By clicking the feature job listings, you can find specific details regarding open positions, required qualifications, and application deadlines and whatnot. Now, another essential resource is the Japan Foundation Los Angeles website. This is a goldmine of information for anyone interested in becoming a Japanese teacher in the United States. For instance, this site categorizes the various types of institutions that offer Japanese beyond K through 12 public and private schools or universities. There are opportunities at community colleges, Saturday schools, Hoshuko, nonprofits like the Japan American Society, and even private for-profit and online schools. Now, the Japan Foundation site also lists institutions where you can earn teaching credentials. This is important to note that while all K through public school teachers must be state certified, requirements vary significantly by state. Private schools may be more flexible with certification, but often require a master's degree. Most programs listed are initial certification at the undergraduate level. Since most JET participants already hold a BA, you should look toward master's programs or alternative pathways. My colleague, Dr. Thor Sawin, will join us shortly to explain these alternative routes in more detail. Now, to be a successful teacher, you must demonstrate proficiency at the advanced level, or at least intermediate high, across all skills, based on the ACTFL, American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages scale. At the advanced level, you should be comfortable using paragraph-length Japanese, discussing abstract topics, and writing academic reports with relative accuracy. A quick note regarding JLPT N2 and N1. While they are prestigious, they do not assess speaking or writing. So as a teacher, it's vital that you demonstrate competency in all four skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Now, AATJ graduate has a special interest group dedicated to the Japanese language education graduate program network. This is chaired by Dr. J. DiBello Takeuchi Sensei at Indiana University Bloomington, and a JET alum and president-elect of the AATJ, yay. And then Dr. Atsushi Hasegawa from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Now, on this SIG page, you will find an extensive list of graduate programs in Japanese and East Asian languages and cultures across the United States. While I could not fit every single program on this slide, this list is a fantastic starting point. I encourage you to visit the site and download the full directory. Now, I am fully aware that the cost of a master's degree or MAT certification can be daunting. Traditional pathways can be expensive, but they are not the only option. Again, Dr. Thor Sawin will discuss alternative, more cost-effective ways to reach your goals later in this session. Now, if you choose a traditional graduate path, please look into teaching assistants, research assistants, assistantship, and fellowships. These opportunities can tremendously reduce or even eliminate your tuition costs. Now, I would like to use Middlebury's program as an example. We offer an MA and MAT in Japanese language and culture with very reasonable tuition and significant financial aid and Tobita scholarship, merit scholarship. Our MA and MAT programs typically take 18 months to complete. They begin with an in-person summer session in Vermont, followed by asynchronous online courses during fall and spring. This structure allows you to continue working in your home area while you study. Now, this is our projected schedule for the 2026 cohort. The MA consists of 12 courses, 11 of which are conducted in Japanese. The MAT certification program includes 6 Japanese courses taken alongside MA students, plus English language education courses and student teaching. Now, what sets Middlebury apart from other diverse is our diverse faculty, I should say, who join us from institutions across the country, from California to DC. Our faculty members are deeply passionate about mentoring the next generation of Japanese educators, leaders. I would like to add, for those who want to improve their proficiency first, to take advantage of our 8-week immersion program. Our asynchronous online courses are taught by expert faculty, while MA courses are taught in Japanese, and MAT courses are conducted in English alongside candidates from other language groups. Our graduates are now teaching at every level, from high school to universities, and many are working in the Japanese consulate or for major Japanese American corporations. Now, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to visit the AATJ homepage and consider becoming a member. It's the best way to stay connected to the profession. And at the very least, I encourage you to attend local AATJ affiliate meeting. I believe Kate Davis, a Middlebury MA alum and current AATJ vice president, will be speaking more about the regional networks shortly. Now, finally, please utilize the Japan Foundation Los Angeles resources to learn more about certification process. It is an invaluable tool for your journey. Thank you very much for your time today. That's it. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Tabuse Sensei. I always learn so much when you put those maps out and you can kind of see the correlation between it all. I think that's probably my favorite part. So thank you so much. And I put it in the chat, but I will mention it here. USJETA has a lot of university partnerships with different higher education institutions, and they give automatic, basically tuition reductions to successful JET and JET alum applicants. And one of our very strong partners is Middlebury, which is one of the reasons that we invite them here tonight. They have an excellent program, but they also have a very generous tuition scholarship that they give to JETs. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Thoris Sawin, who has more nitty-gritty on how this is all going to work and what steps you can actually take. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Sawin.
Yes, it's my pleasure. I'm very thankful to be here, to be with you all. I don't actually speak Japanese. My training is as a German language educator, but I've gotten involved in this world and in these webinars because I've helped to start our Master's in Teaching program that my colleague Dr. Tabuse was discussing. And so I'm happy to talk with you about this. And my part of the presentation is to really kind of give an overview of what the paths are toward becoming a teacher at the high school, or actually PK through 12 level in the United States. So in higher ed, the pathway is a little bit different. But basically, to teach at a public school, you need a teaching license. This is the main obstacle. Now, the greatest shortage of teachers in the United States currently is world language teachers. So although we heard those depressing statistics from the Japan Foundation about how programs are shrinking, as she alluded to, the main reason they're shrinking is because they can't find teachers to replace. The number one reason that a district cuts a language is because they can't find someone who's willing to step in. A lot of districts would keep the program, they would keep their Japanese program that's been built over decades alive if there was someone who was willing to take it on. But people report difficulty in doing that. Because of this, there's a lot of pathways. And so for a public school, you do need a teaching license, which is governed state by state in the United States. So each of the 50 states, 4 territories, and the Department of Defense each do their own teacher licensure. And you can get a public school license through what's called an alternate pathway to licensure, which is probably the easiest way to do that. Or you can get it through a licensed educator preparation program called an EPP. And each state recognizes EPPs within their states that are kind of official trainers of teachers. It's a pathway that's been vetted by the state government, and they can ensure that it has a quality product at the end. Like, you've got teachers that have gone through a rigorous training process on the other side. You can also teach at a private school or a charter school, and there are public charters and private charters without a license. I mean, it's an advantage to have a license, but it's not necessarily required. So if you really are hesitant about even getting into the world of high school teaching at all in the United States context, and you're not sure that you want to do a license yet, you could teach in a charter school or in a private school for a year and see if you like that. One thing that people, I think, public schools have sort of a bad rap, but I think something that people forget is that public school teachers are often paid significantly more than private school teachers, especially when you factor in the quality of their health insurance and the pension contributions. These do vary state by state, but actually public school teaching can be a very stable and very solid career that I think gets overwhelmed sometimes by the news that you hear about it. And in many ways, private schools, although they have more resource, can be somewhat of a more stressful environment to teach in, depending on the school. There's a lot more variability because it's not licensed in the same way that a public school system is controlled by the state. An upside of an alternative pathway is they're often faster. These are often pathways you can be hired in a school right away, even if you've had no training, and you kind of make a deal with the school district that you'll pursue some kind of training while you're working. So it's easier. A downside of these is that they often don't have financial aid attached to them at all because they're assumed to be a for-profit program. Like, you're working already as a teacher, so you're making the full salary, so they don't need to necessarily aid you. Also, these are usually only recognized within that one state. So if you know for sure that you want to spend your whole life kind of teaching in this state, an alternate pathway is easier. But if you're not sure exactly where you would want to teach, or you'd want to be able to transfer your license. There's limits to this reciprocity. States don't recognize each other's alternative pathways in the same way. Sometimes there's the kind where you're doing while you're teaching is called an emergency licensure. Other times you can use your prior teaching experience to put in a portfolio and get it that way. The state of Vermont, where I live, lets you do that. So if you collect data on your JET experience, like you're collecting videos of you teaching, the assignments, sort of your reflections on teaching, as much material as you can, many states offer an option to get licensed through portfolio. You may have to complete it, write some reflections, essays, do a few things, but you can actually use the JET experience to get an alternate certification through this route. Sometimes, if you've already started an education program but you didn't finish it, you can do what's called transcript review, where they'll look at the courses you've already taken and get you part of the way there toward a teaching license, but you still may have to take some extra classes that are missing. If you do an educator preparation program, the NASTEC, it's the agreement between all of the states, allow for reciprocity among the states. There are some states that have extra courses. If you want to transfer to New York, you need to take a substance abuse class. If you want to teach in Arkansas, you need to take an Arkansas history class. In Montana, teaching an indigenous learners class. So there's certain kinds of workshops or seminars. A lot of times these are online asynchronous that you would need to do when you add to your license when you move between the states. But for the most part, there is a pathway between all of the states that are out there. And a nice thing about this is that you student teach with a mentor teacher. You know, I know in the JET experience, sometimes you're just kind of dropped in a classroom sometimes without as much support as you would like. But if you do it through an educator preparation program, you have two people, you have a local cooperating teacher who's committed to your success, and you have a practicum instructor at the home university who's committed to your success. So there's a lot of mentorship in that kind of program, which isn't always the case in an alternate pathway where you're often already just kind of teaching and building the ship as you're flying it. So what a licensure through an EPP usually requires, you'll need a basic skills test. Something like Praxis is a provider of tests through educational testing services. They usually want to see English reading skills, writing skills, and math and English. And this is because as a teacher, you might have to step in and fill in being a social studies teacher or a math teacher for an extra period as the school district requires. So they want to see that you have the general skills that you would need to be a teacher. There's lots of ways to do that. Many states will accept your ACT or SAT scores or GRE scores, military tests that you've taken, but there's ways you have to satisfy this requirement. You also have to demonstrate your language proficiency in your teaching language. I'll show this link at the end. So take some Japanese language test. There is a Praxis test, which about 24 states use in Japanese to prove that you have sufficient Japanese skills to be a Japanese teacher. There are states that don't do that, actually, that they ask you to take an actual test, like a proficiency interview and a written proficiency test. And states will differ on how high your level needs to be. Most states who do that require advanced low, but many also require intermediate high. So somewhere in that range to be a teacher. You need some kind of often a portfolio experience. Vermont requires this. There's 18 states that do that. You would kind of gather evidence of your teaching skills, your ability to do lesson plans, your ability to do assessments. In Vermont, in our program, we have 60 hours of classroom observation. This can go up to actually 200 before you become a student teacher, depending on the program, where you're spending time in educational context, watching, kind of helping get gradually on-ramped towards the particular challenges of a school. Most will have some kind of coursework. In our program, we have 36 credits of coursework, and I like our program because it's really focused. All of the courses are on teaching language to adolescents. There's a lot of programs where the coursework may be more general, just kind of general practices of being a good teacher. And then a student teaching placement, which is often a minimum of 13 weeks, one semester. Some educator preparation programs have you teach less intensively, but over the course of a whole year. So the design can differ a little bit. And then the license at the end, some states will offer a secondary license. That's the only context where they do world language teaching is in the middle or high school. Others will offer a PK through 12. States like Michigan, they only offer a PK through 12, actually. So they assume that we should have you ready to teach elementary just in case we need it. But if you come from a state that has a secondary license, you can usually then transfer it over to a state that has a PK through 12 license. And they just may ask you to do some observations in an elementary school if they were to ever have you teach at an elementary school. But you'd mostly only be eligible for jobs at a high school if you have a high school license. So that's just something to look for, what age ranges the license goes to. And I do think if I were to do an EPP, if I was going to advise you to do this, try to pick one that's just for world language teachers. As my colleague, Dr. Tabuse said, our Japanese Masters in Teaching program, in these summer courses, we have classes that are entirely in Japanese, taught by expert Japanese teachers, which is really, really unique. They're the only Masters in Teaching program that I know that kind of has this model with that caliber of teachers. And then you have some online classes that are taught in English together with teachers of many different languages. But again, it's all focused on world language teaching at the secondary level, and then your student teaching. And part of this is because I know other Masters in Teaching programs will have, you're with kindergarten teachers and gym teachers, and everyone is all together. And like what unites that is a little bit more vague. So if you can be in a class that's designed just for secondary teachers. One thing I should say as well is that the educator preparation programs that exist, they can be at the post-bac level. So you're getting a bachelor's degree and then you take some extra classes. This is often kind of a year worth of like a semester of really intensive preparation, a semester of student teaching. You don't really get anything beyond a bachelor's degree at the end, but you have a teaching license. You're adding a teaching license to your bachelor's degree. A master's in teaching, you're combining a master's degree with the license. Both of those things go together. And the advantage of a master's in teaching is that you start out your teaching career at a higher salary band, so that as you go through promotions all the way up, you're already starting a little bit higher. And then the next band that you would be eligible to take would be a master's plus 15 or master's plus 30, which significantly raise your salary over the course of your career because you already have the master's degree. So you've kind of got a head start in that progression for pay. There was one other document that I wanted to show, which was just kind of an example of the sorts of the tests, again, that you would need to take in Japanese as you're thinking about your Japanese. You could take them if you feel like your Japanese is really strong at the end of the JET program and like you don't think it's going to get much stronger. I might encourage you to actually take your Japanese proficiency test early at the start of that and kind of have that on your record while your Japanese is really strong, unless you want to come to a program like ours where you would strengthen your Japanese. But most states, you'll take the praxis test in Japanese. Some states, advanced low, intermediate high. There are a few states that offer their own versions of their test. In California and Colorado, if you have a degree in Japanese or if you've got coursework in Japanese, that suffices. You don't need to take any extra Japanese tests beyond that. So that's kind of an overview of teacher licensure and teaching opportunities in the United States. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Salwin. I don't know how you keep all of that straight in your mind. I feel like, if you're not familiar with that world and you're just sort of stepping into it, it can feel really overwhelming because you're like every state has its own thing and every level has its own thing. But you always do a fantastic job of just kind of streamlining it and making it actually feel approachable and somewhat logical, which I always think is amazing. So thank you so much.
And there's a path for everybody's need and everyone's interest. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I think that's so important because, when we host, and we host this webinar like twice a year, usually in the spring and again in late fall. So if you want to revisit the material or you want to come back to speak to, panelists again, feel free to join us again in the future. But we have a really wide variety of people joining, right? We have JETs that already have they definitely have their bachelor's degree, and some of them have master's degree. We have people from the general public that are just trying to figure this out. We've got students that are like Japanese students in university right now, and they're looking at this path. So I really appreciate that you always present all of the different pathways for us. Thanks so much. So from here, I'm going to hand it over to Kate Davis to run the panel discussion, which is really a fun part because we get to bring on 3 JET alum teachers that are teaching Japanese in the classroom, in the field right now, just to share sort of some of their thoughts and their experiences with you all. And I think that's a really important part of the whole webinar because it kind of just brings it to life in a different way. So Kate, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right, thank you. I have a quick introduction and then I'm going to have my panelists join me in a moment. So good evening, everyone. Konbanwa and hajimemashite to those of you I haven't met. My name is Catherine Davis. I go by Kate, and I'll be moderating the panel discussion this evening. And I want to welcome you as well to our Pathways to Becoming a Japanese Language Educator. We are thrilled to have you with us. So full disclosure, I was not a JET. However, I did do work, very similar work as an ALT through a similar program between sister cities here in Michigan and in Shizuoka Prefecture. So I'm very familiar with the work that JETs do or have done. And I'm honored to be here to act as a moderator for this session. Currently, I am teaching Japanese at Washtenaw Community College, which is near both University of Michigan and Eastern Michigan University, and where many of our students transfer to those schools. I am also in my second year as one of the vice presidents of the American Association of Teachers of Japanese. I represent K-12 education, and I am also currently the president of the Japanese Teachers Association of Michigan, one of our local affiliates. So we're going to be talking about those smaller groups today. I have experience in private, public, and charter schools, and I've been teaching students as young as fourth grade up to a 65-year-old gentleman who is in my class right now. And I started a brand new Japanese program at a high school in Detroit. So I also have experience starting new programs. So if we're looking to expand Japanese and add it to new schools, I have maybe some ideas that might help. So my job tonight is to facilitate the panel discussion, which basically means keeping us in our time constraints. So audience, please know you'll have a chance to speak to all our panelists in our breakout rooms. And please keep track of your questions if they don't get answered while our panelists have, sorry, my screen's changing, if our panelists don't answer your question. So now I'm going to pass the mic to my panelists, give them an opportunity to introduce themselves before we jump into the questions. And so panelists, if you could please tell your name, your current title or position, and the time and location of your JET service. Chien sensei, お願いします。
はい、よろしくお願いします。おはようございます。I know it's probably morning for those of you who are in Japan right now, so thank you so much for joining us. My name is Cameron Chien. I am a Japanese teacher. My title is just Hey Teacher at North Salinas High School over in California. I was over in Niigata, where you get your best rice and all that stuff. I didn't really drink, but anyways, the rice was really good. We had good fish. I was there for 5 years, between 2008 to 2013, out in the boonies where there's just snow and onsen every single day. I'm looking forward to sharing with all of you, and I'll pass to Kitchen Sensei.
はじめまして. My name is Jeremy Kitchen, and I am a Japanese language teacher in San Jose, California at Lynbrook High School. I've been there for about 20 years. I was a JET in Kumamoto Prefecture, kind of in the Inaka as well, but I was there from the year 2000 to 2003. Taylor Sensei?
はじめまして、こんばんは。そして日本にいる皆様、おはようございます。My name is Laurel Taylor. I am an assistant professor of Japanese at the University of Denver, where I am teaching courses from first year Japanese all the way up through advanced level courses. And I was a JET from 2012 to 2015 in Hokkaido, which has much nicer weather than the rest of the islands, in my opinion.
Thank you all very much. So my first question is, how did your experience teaching English in Japan through the JET program influence your desire for teaching Japanese in the US? Should I pick on someone? Chien Sensei, would you like to start with that one?
Sure, absolutely. So thank you very much. So for myself, I I need to start off with sharing a little bit about myself for learning Japanese. I began learning Japanese officially through college here, and I went through the Genki textbook. So I think many of you are like, yeah, Genki, how's Mary and Takeshi doing? You know, all their wild adventures. So it was very interesting learning in the classroom there as a learner, going to Japan and being, I was a CIR, but I was doing ALT work, having that experience in the classroom there and realizing, okay, it's cool that we're teaching them grammar, but then honestly, what I remember, and I wonder for most Jets here, what do you truly remember from your experience on the program? Is it teaching the grammar, or is it really making those genuine connections with your students and also your staff there? Yes, we're teaching the language, but also I think I saw my students, maybe you might agree, that their joy really stemmed from learning about not just the language, but the culture for English-speaking countries, whether that is from the UK, whether that's from New Zealand, whatever that is. And that influenced me to do the opposite, coming back this way. I'm doing like whiplash here. By teaching Japanese, I'm not only teaching the language, but really trying to help my students find their genuine connections to Japanese people, to a different world for them. And yeah, I just want to open up that new possibilities. So that was my experience. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kitchen Sensei, I believe you.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that. Similar paths, but I think I came to Japan through the JET program, not really thinking that I was going to become an educator. I was like probably many of you, I just loved Japan, and I had been there a few times and I was excited to get back. I had been involved in coaching high school sports before I left, and so I was like, this may be a path where I can interact with kids, maybe coach and do some things like that. But it was really in the JET program that I think we get to see some really good and some really bad examples of education. But I think, as a learner, the first course that I actually cared about was learning Japanese. And so to be able to bring that passion, and the JET program gives you so many valuable ways to think about teaching and interacting, that it really kind of built that vision for me that when I came back, I was like, I want to figure out a way to become an educator and to make that work. So I think it had a ton of influence in my path for sure.
Thank you. Wonderful. So Taylor, since I'm going to turn to you first for the next question, why are JET alumni and not native speakers such as ourselves well suited for teaching Japanese?
One of the comments I've repeatedly gotten throughout the years as I have learned how to teach Japanese, most of my advisors in this area have been native Japanese speakers. And again, they have told me how important it is to have non-native speakers also teaching the language, because we can see particular aspects of the language, either in terms of grammar or in terms of just like the writing system, that present particular difficulties to native English speakers, specifically in this context, that sometimes native speakers just miss or don't really think about. And so we can really provide insights into ways of explaining the grammar that maybe make more sense for English native speakers. Or sometimes, in the case of Spanish, like Spanish has those relative place locations, the Kosoado series in Japanese, similar. And so the fact that, for instance, somebody who is a native speaker of Spanish could reach for that as an example to show their students can be really helpful sometimes.
Thank you. Kitchen Sensei, Chien Sensei, did you have anything to add to the comments about non-native teacher strengths?
I want to just piggyback off of what Taylor said, ditto everything in terms of language. Plus, I would also like to touch upon perspectives. And what I mean by that is this. For us as non-native speakers, that includes myself, and learning the language, what's fascinating, I think a lot of us could agree, is when we're learning Japanese culture, whether that's through the books, in classes, from wonderful professors, whether that's actually being on JET and making connections within the classroom and outside, is that we find these little new discoveries between the cultural differences, for better or for worse. There are a lot of things that I think native speakers do not really understand. And it's no fault of their own, because they grew up in that culture, so they kind of know. But then I believe that we can perhaps connect with our non-native students even better, or perhaps in some cases we have some what are those called? Keishogo, heritage speakers. So say they're Japanese American students, for example, who grew up in the States. They have that cultural identity crisis where I think we can really fill in that gap there. And that's one of our strengths that we should really hold on to.
And I think connected to that, if I may, our students can see themselves in us, that, we are teaching them. They are non-native speakers. And so it's kind of like a bit of a mirror, like you are welcome in this world too. You don't just have to be a native speaker to be a part of it. So our next question is about student demographics and motivations, and how they might differ or be the same between K-12 and college level Japanese learners. I have taught at both, like I said, my youngest learners were fourth grade up through, I'm at a community college right now. I don't see a whole lot of difference. I find that there's like a lot of pop culture is motivating my students to study Japanese. But I would say maybe at the college level that careers or like the desire to live and work in Japan is a big motivator. So I'm curious what you all see as well. Yeah, Kitchen Sensei, please.
Yeah, I will jump in here. I think I definitely agree. A lot of my students are super motivated by pop culture and by things around them. But I think that they vary, and you never know quite what it is. I think at the high school level, a lot of it depends on these are eighth graders making decisions what they're going to take in high school. And so it may be that their friend decided they want to take Japanese and that's why they're there. But a lot of them, I think what motivates them to continue, I think going back to Chien Sensei, what he was talking about in terms of they find something about the community or about the culture or about things that really draw them into it. So I think that's definitely true.
Yeah, I say to my students often, like, Japanese kids don't read Genki, they don't read Tobira. Like, this is not entertaining to them. So there's plenty out there that makes it fun and exciting to know a language like Japanese. Let's see. Question number 4, about salaries. So do average salaries for K-12 teachers and college instructors, how do they compare?
I'll just jump in since I'm unmuted. I think it's hard because they are all over the place. I think is the reality. I think one of the things that I didn't understand when I was getting into it, I think there's a lot of information out there about how underpaid public school teachers are, and that may be true. But I think the reality is that many of us are also able to find work and meaningful work and support families while doing it. And so I think it definitely differs depending on the district that you work for, and the opportunities, but there's a lot of great opportunities out there. And so I don't know what it is like at the higher education level.
I can speak a little bit to that. So with higher education, there are a couple different tracks, I guess you might think of it as, where you may be teaching, and that's adjuncting, teaching track professor, or tenure track professor, or sometimes a visiting professor, right? And all of those are paid completely differently, and very often, most unfortunately, still paid based on your level of education and your rank, which I think is deeply unfair. It's an unfortunate part of the college system. But if you are adjuncting, you're getting paid per credit hour that you were teaching. So yeah, you're getting X number or X amount of dollars per credit hour. And you're probably also not receiving any benefits. You're probably not getting health insurance. You're probably not getting any of that nice stuff, which is hard. It's really hard. It looks like Kate can speak to.
I can speak to that if anyone wants to come and talk to me. I'm more than happy to talk about my salary and
Yeah.
my fight to try and be full-time, but
Yeah. And then teaching track professors tend to have a higher load of teaching. Here at DU, which is on a quarter system, our teaching track professors are teaching 8 classes a year. So that works out as a 3-3-2 so 3 classes for 2 quarters and then 2 classes for 1 quarter. And they're still not paid that much. Honestly, I think it's a crime. They should be paid more. And then if you're a tenure track professor, this is often dependent on many things, including like what kind of university you're at. You're probably teaching, I teach a 222 load, but then you have additional expectations about research putting forth. And I make the most of my colleagues, which I feel bad about. That should not be the case because I'm not teaching as much as them. But having those rankings in mind and what kind of education you need to get to those rankings will definitely impact your salary.
And Chien Sensei, did you have anything to add about salaries, or shall we move on to the next question?
I mean, nothing to really add, but I think to really echo what Dr. Solomon was saying earlier in terms of private school versus public school, was really eye-opening for me before getting into this job. So really look into public school, guys, if that's something that you're worried about for salaries and benefits.
And I worked I started at a private school. I thought I was paid pretty fairly, but I did work in Detroit public schools, and I had a wonderful salary with my master's degree. There was especially a wonderful jump with the salary, and I found the Detroit pay scale, so I can share that later. Most of that stuff is public information, so you can find the union records of the agreements that they've made with the districts. So. My final big question is about mentorship. So, what role does mentorship play in becoming a Japanese language teacher? And before you guys chime in, I'll speak real quick on behalf of AATJ, our wonderful American Association of Teachers of Japanese, which is our big national umbrella membership, or our organization that as a member, you would be connected to other national members. There's conferences you'll be aware of. The job board will be, visible to you. And then within that, we have 26 affiliates. So not every state has its own, but some states are more of a regional affiliate. Here in Michigan, we have the Japanese Teachers Association of Michigan. And when I first expressed interest in becoming a Japanese teacher, my professor at Michigan State, Endo Sensei, asked, "Do you know about JTAM? Have you heard of JTAM?" And so that was my kind of step into, and I got to know all of the wonderful people here in Michigan that are teaching Japanese, connected to other classes and programs. I've met, Tabuse Sensei through Michigan, and we do a quiz bowl, we do a speech contest. There's all sorts of things we do on behalf of our students. So it's been really, really wonderful to be a part of this Teachers Association where we have these collaboration and a mentorship. So any of the new teachers, I had wonderful mentors as I was a new member. And now I'm acting as the president and am trying to encourage our new members to become, active members and taking roles in leadership. So I will leave that there. And who would like to also speak about mentorship?
Okay, I'll jump in. I think just piggybacking off of that, a lot of times in the K through 12 system, if you get a job at a site, you may be the only Japanese teacher. I'm the only Japanese language teacher. I have one level one, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, one AP class, and that's my world. And it's very easy to get into your own silo, especially as a new teacher, of just feeling overwhelmed and trying to take all that in. And so definitely being proactive and figuring out who your groups are, who are the people around you who are teaching, because a lot of us are kind of in our own little worlds, but a lot of us would love to support new teachers coming in. But we get caught up in our world too. And so these organizations are a great way. I'm a part of CAJLT with Chien Sensei, and so that's one of our ways that we connect with each other and with other teachers who come through. And so I just would encourage that for sure.
If you are interested in teaching at the collegiate level, there are a couple different pathways to do that. My particular pathway is that I have a PhD in Japanese and comparative literature. And what that actually works out to is that most of my training and most of my coursework was in Japanese literature, not so much in teaching Japanese language. I had to really push for the opportunity to TA Japanese language because I knew it was very realistic that I was probably going to be teaching Japanese language. And I, went, my undergrad was at Middlebury College and I had amazing professors there. And I really wanted to live up to their expectations, whether they have those of me or not. And so I really went out of my way to be involved in the Japanese language program, to TA for them and eventually to adjunct for them. And I really looked to our program coordinator there for a lot of advice on how to teach. And so if you're interested in teaching at the collegiate level, you really have to be proactive, especially if you're doing a PhD in something that's not second language acquisition or foreign language acquisition. You have to push back if you have an advisor who's like, oh, you don't need to know that. No, you do. You absolutely do. It's a key part of the job market, and you should find help sooner rather than later.
And Chien Sensei, anything to add?
Piggybacking, excuse me, off of what Taylor had mentioned right now too. When you think back to your quote unquote best teachers, most memorable mentors in your life, they probably had a really big impact in what it is that you wanted to do, maybe got you interested in something. And for myself, that's what happened too. After JET, I came back, and most JETs is either you find Eikaiwa in JET, or I mean, sorry, in Japan, or you come back and you do grad school. That's really the usual path. Ended up going to grad school for a master's. That's actually under Dr. Sawan. That's a different story though. And I got my master's in teaching Japanese because I wanted to teach at college level actually. But while that would have been great, but how did I end up being in high school was that I was fortunate enough to also make other connections while I was on here. I got to meet other wonderful, amazing community of Japanese high school teachers as well. And the rest is history. Here, 11 years, 12 years later now, here I am still with it. And I just want to add that we were just talking about salaries. And honestly, are you really going to look into teaching for money? Probably not. Or I mean, let me retract that. You need money, okay? But you're not doing it to make lots of bucks. You're not in the right profession, okay? But what I think that despite the statistic that, at least for our high school teachers, right? Typically 4 to 5 years is the breaking point, I think. That's probably so true for teachers. They tend to half the profession, they tend to leave. But what keeps a lot of us who stay in, I think, it's not true for everybody, but I think that having that strong community, supportive community, whether that's Japanese teachers or whether even the other teachers that are at your site, is so important. So ever more so before you start your career, it can be really powerful to find those kind of mentorships, whether that's through a class visit, going to say you're interested in college, interested in high school, whatever it is, just get out there. And you can start with the people in here. We can all guide you to make some kind of connection for you. So highly recommended.
Oh, I was going to say, keep your microphone on because I'm going to ask each of you for a 1 minute final thought. And if you need some direction, if you have any final piece of advice for our guests moving forward. Go ahead, Chien Sensei. We'll go Chien, Kitchen, Taylor.
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you for your interest. What are you waiting for? We're waiting for you in the breakout rooms. Let's get connected, man. All right.
I think just in terms of advice, as you are starting to go out there, think about you were in JET, you were involved working with different people. What group of people do you most want to influence and be a part of? I think it is a wonderful profession. It is a lot of work, and it's something that we love and but I just would encourage you to explore like what really would motivate you to be a part of that, because it will have its ups and downs and it will have its stuff and it's so worth it. Um, but I would spend some time thinking about what you really want.
I guess in some ways I want to echo Chien Sensei, but don't do this alone. Whatever path you decide to choose, you do not have to do it alone. Reach out, ask for help, talk to your advisors, your senpai, whoever. who might be able to give you some resources, some help, some advice. I have so many students right now who are just trying to go it alone. And I'm like, you don't have to do this alone. It's okay to ask for help. And you indeed should ask for help because a lot of people have done this before you and they are happy to share their resources. So,
Amen. I've never met a mean Japanese teacher, right? We are more than happy to help and guide you in the right direction or provide any advice. Thank you so much to our panelists. We are going to break out into breakout rooms, and I'm going to turn it over to Jessica in a moment. So if you have any further questions for each of them, I should also mention that I am a graduate of the Middlebury MA program. So if you're curious about what it's like to be a Middlebury student, I am happy to speak to that. So I believe, Jessica, turn it back over to you, and we'll get ready for our breakout rooms. Thanks, panelists.
Great. Thank you so much. I love always hearing from all of my fellow JET alum panelists and just the pathways that you took. And I love that you started in one classroom and maybe, in Japan, and you didn't really anticipate being in a classroom forever, but, here you are. And I think all of us, probably all of us that are on this call tonight, we were all really impacted by our teachers. At the high school level and the university level. And I'm sure that impact is really why many of us got into Japanese in the first place. It's usually that or some other personal experience, right, that really, keeps us feeling very connected to Japan. And then there's the feeling of just wanting to turn around and share that again, right? Just kind of pay it forward in our own way. So we have about a little less than 30 minutes left, which is perfect. Kate, you did an awesome job of moderating that, and you kept us right on time, which is fantastic because teachers and JETs love to talk forever. So good job. We are going to open up the breakout rooms. The breakout rooms are going to be named after the panelists, so you can just kind of hop in and out. But this is really your chance to get in there and ask questions. You have a pretty good idea of the expertise and the background that they all bring to the table now. So feel free to hop around and really take advantage of this time that you have. We will let you know when the breakout rooms are going to close. We'll give you a little bit of a warning, and then we'll all gather here in the lobby before we close out for the evening. But stick around, take advantage of this time. This is, we do this Q&A session space. We create it for you. So please take advantage of it.